Hi everybody, welcome to Livewire Review. This is the weekly podcast. If you're listening to this on Spotify, come on over to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@LivewireReview. And we're going to be talking about a couple of things today. The topics today, basically Tesla, hence the Tesla shirt today. And we're going to be talking about farm equipment, the Lightning, and some of the other things it can do. So stay tuned for that. So I only have one piece of news for today. It was actually Andrew who contacted me and said I should probably talk about the Supercharger team that was just laid off at Tesla. And I did not delve into all the news articles on this. I didn't really want to read into it. I'll just offer you some of my thoughts on it. I really don't think it was a good idea to get rid of the Supercharger team, especially since they were doing such a good job negotiating with all the other OEMs and getting that NACS connector on other cars. So just like when they gutted the PR department, who are other OEMs supposed to talk to when it comes to adopting that standard? This was a really, really big historical moment for the EV industry, was adopting the NACS connector and allowing that supercharger access. So I really hope that they come up with a solution in the future that allows them to talk to the other OEMs. The other problem with it is the fact that they've actually canceled numerous sites that were supposed to have superchargers put in. And as you may already know, superchargers are one of the fastest things that can be installed when it comes to the charging network. They have a factory that actually builds them, and then they only have to be delivered on a truck, and they can have a supercharger up and running in about a week, as long as the approval process is done, of course. Planning the site, getting the approvals done, and signing all the paperwork takes far longer than actually putting up the station, but still, they're one of the fastest in the industry in order to get those supercharger sites open. The other nice thing about their approach to this system, being that they're a vertically integrated company, is they have control over the entire process of that supercharger network, including building them. I think it only costs them about a third as much to put a supercharger station in as any of the other charging companies. This is why other charging companies have a problem making profit on this whole sector, is because their equipment is so expensive. In some cases here in Canada, a single charger can cost upwards of $250,000. And that's just because there has to be infrastructure improvements to a building in order to put in, let's say, a 100 kilowatt DC fast charger. Because if it has to pull from the grid, three-phase power going to a building is fine and supports this, but sometimes it's not enough. And sometimes you actually have to upgrade that infrastructure just so it can handle that 100 kilowatt charging. One of the other ways you can approach this subject is to get a unit that has a battery in it, and it has its own 20 kilowatt AC charger inside. It's basically an electric vehicle sitting, except it doesn't move. It's got its own battery bank inside of it. Now, I believe Shell is using these chargers, and they had a pilot program out where it was free. So a lot of the time when people went to use it, those batteries were dead. But in most cases, this infrastructure does work. You're able to charge the in-unit battery overnight when the electricity is cheap, and then dispense it when somebody needs a fast charge. And I think that's great technology. It means that they can pop up in more locations that they couldn't before. And that really does solve a lot of problems. In fact, if you check out my interview with Adam Bourgeois, he was talking about installing those at his other dealerships just so he doesn't have to do the infrastructure improvements. Now, getting back to Tesla's supercharger network, they have emphasized the importance of uptime. Now, the reason the supercharger network is globally known as the most reliable charging network is because of that uptime. I believe right now they're sitting at 98, 99% uptime on almost every unit. And even though they've gutted that team, they fired the executives that are in charge of that program, they are going to start focusing on reliability. They want to see 100% uptime outside of, let's say, a power failure that they have no control over. Well, you know what? I'll take that back for a second. Tesla is also the largest manufacturer of mega packs. They might even have backup systems at the superchargers so you can still charge your car in a power outage. You never know. That could be technology that they bring out in the future. So my thoughts in a nutshell on the supercharger network and the executives being fired, I'm not too happy about it. I would prefer that they kept that team open. I think it was the most important part of that business because they made the electric car successful back in 2013-ish when they started the supercharger network, because without it, people were not going to believe in the product. They would not believe that they can get across this country of ours or even the country below us. and it is one of their greatest assets. And I believe they'll be able to sell to other EVs when they open up the network, and they're going to be the most reliable network, of course, across the industry. And if you think about Rivian's nav update, when it comes to navigating the chargers, what charger is going to have the most reliable network? So it's going to probably direct you to Tesla superchargers on the way, those V3 and V4 units. Now, there is an upside to this. I know it's hard to see it now, but there have been a lot of good things that have happened when executives leave Tesla, because they have already been taught engineering. They've learned things as they go through Tesla's growing pains, and a lot of those people that are now looking for work have incredible skill sets and knowledge and experience that they would never have received anywhere else in the industry. If you think about JB Straubel, for example, they started Redwood Materials, the battery recycling company, which is now going to be one of the biggest recycling companies in the United States for recycling lithium-ion batteries. Their whole mission is to have that cyclical program in which the battery materials go in, they crush them down, they get 95% of those materials back, they get all the nickel, manganese, cobalt, and aluminum back out of them, and they only have about 5% waste, let's say the plastic casings and whatever they can't recycle. And they are about to switch on full-scale production of that recycling, which makes for a cyclical program. Even right now, Tesla is actually supplying Redwood with defective batteries and manufacturing waste that they can't use. And Redwood Materials is already breaking those things down and selling those materials back to Tesla to make new battery packs already. So that means even now and into the future, Redwood Materials and other recycling companies are going to pop up, and we're going to have a cyclical recycling program for all lithium-ion batteries, which means that all of those materials that we're digging up out of the ground now will be there in the future to use again. We don't have to dig them up in the future. We don't have to have 100% supply chain from China's and Africa's mineral deposits. Now, continuing on with that, think of another executive that left Tesla and started a car company. Have you ever heard of Lucid Motors? An executive from Tesla left and started Lucid Motors. Now, if they had not left Tesla, Lucid Motors would not exist. Redwood Materials would not exist. Lucid Motors would not exist. And there have been Tesla executives that have left the company and taken their knowledge and gone to the competition. Now, this wouldn't generally be a good thing, but since Tesla has some really innovative thinking, it allows that innovative thinking to penetrate into other companies, which is very, very good for the industry. It's very good for everyone. It means that, like, if these executives hadn't left the company, would we have the NACS connector on other vehicles? And although this brings me back to why it's not so good that the Supercharger team has been dismantled, it was because of their coercion and innovation that they were able to convince Elon Musk to allow other companies to use that connector. And he goes, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do that. And like I said in my first podcast here on Spotify, it's a historical moment. And I really do hope that they continue forward with this. I believe they're going to build this program back up again. We just never know what's happening inside a company or why they have to trim employees. It's always sad when they do, but there are upsides to it. Those people have skill sets they wouldn't have received anywhere else, and they're able to share that with the rest of the industry. Now, I'll bring up my next thought. This is not news. I'm going to talk about Tesla's full self-driving. You don't typically hear me talk about it. I'm not a big believer in Tesla's full self-driving, but as you're probably all aware, all Tesla owners were given a free trial of Tesla's full self-driving for a month. That month trial has expired for me. I got to try it out. Honestly, I didn't use it very often because I'm not a fan of Tesla's full self-driving. I used it on some county back roads. I used it on the highway. I used it to drive to and from work for a few days just to see what it would do. While there are impressive sides to it, I still don't like it. I'll be perfectly honest. I am not a fan of Tesla's full self-driving. Please just answer me in the comments. Let me know what you think of Tesla's full self-driving. I was not a fan. It is a camera-based system, which means that there are compromises. Now, I understand Tesla's product is a lot cheaper to manufacture, which means that it gives them more flexibility to lower the prices on the product because the actual product is simpler. The only thing that's in the car is a short, medium, and long distance camera in the windshield. They've even gotten rid of parking sensors in the newest ones, and they have those other cameras, the 2 facing forward, 2 fender mounted going backwards, and then the camera on the trunk. Now, the only issue with this is you need some serious software programming in order for this system to work. It uses that 3-way camera in the front to have depth perception, just like your eyes. They have depth perception, except for both of our eyes are just apart from each other, and they have the same distance, whereas a Tesla camera has depth perception from a short, medium, and long-range camera. Now, while this does a great job, it doesn't always work. I'll give a couple examples here. When I allowed it to drive me home, I was very impressed when I got to a major intersection with a stop sign where the cross traffic is going over 90 kilometers an hour and there's kind of a slightly blind bend around. My car was able to pull up away from that stop sign, wait for traffic to go by, and as soon as the last car went by, it took me across that intersection, down the hill, and then did another left-hand turn into traffic, waiting for cars to go by. I was genuinely impressed with that. But not 1 minute later did it go around this minor S-bend near my house, and the car tried to drive in the gravel on the side of the road, and I had to take control. So, like, what's the point? I understand autopilot. I use autopilot all the time. It is so relaxing on the highway. If you're going for a very, very long drive, autopilot does reduce your fatigue. You're always in control of the car, but autopilot does such a good job of keeping the car in its lane. It'll move over slightly if a car ends up meandering close to your lane. The car is smart enough to know to move over and avoid that vehicle. And there are a lot of incidents in which autopilot has really helped drivers on the road. So there are genuine benefits to this program. And I commend anyone who is willing to be a tester for full self-driving because I think it's several billion miles maybe now that full self-driving has driven. And we need, 10 billion plus? We need several more than what it has actually driven for a proper working program. But those testing miles so far have really made great strides in autopilot. And I am a big fan of autopilot. I am not a big fan of full self-driving. I did not enjoy it. I don't like the car having complete control and having to do human-based decisions at an intersection while I'm in the car. Now, I understand that I'm in control and can hit the brake at any time, but I can tell you with confidence that it was not relaxing. Autopilot is relaxing because I know that it's going to stay in that one lane and it's going to keep driving at the speed it's supposed to unless it sees like a speed sign on the side of the road or if the car in front of me slows down. I want it to do that. But full self-driving will decide that it wants to change lanes and you don't expect it. Like you can even turn off a setting and make it so that it has minimal lane changes. But here's another example. I had to do a right turn to merge on something. And the car decided it was going to change lanes into the high-speed lane, taking me out of the low-speed lane that I needed to be in to make that right-hand turn. I can't answer why the car did that. So I had to take control, and it was not relaxing. And the people around me think you're crazy because all of a sudden the car is putting on its turn signal and starting to move over, and then all of a sudden the car jerks back in its lane because you've taken control of the car. It's stressful for the driver. It's stressful for the people around the car that is trying to drive itself, even though the driver is still in control. I am just not a fan. And you're completely allowed to have different opinions than I did on this program. I know a lot of people think it's phenomenal, and I have seen comments online where it goes to and from work, it goes down highways. They've had it drive for an hour and a half straight with no interventions. That wasn't the case for me. There was even one other time to go on a county road where we are, There's a fork in the road where one side goes to a merge lane that drives onto this other road, and the other way is for left-hand turns. Well, we got up to that merge, and I wanted to see what the car was doing. I had my hand close to the steering wheel, and then all of a sudden it started to drive towards the median at the very last moment, and it was not going to make it. I had to very violently pull it back. Whereas if I was in autopilot and I'd put on the turn signal myself, this wouldn't have happened, you know? So in a nutshell, those are my thoughts on full self-driving. I commend anyone who's willing to use it. Just be careful with it. And from my experience, it's not relaxing because you never know when the car is going to make some weird judgment-based decision that you weren't prepared for. But on the other hand, it is really good to have all those miles recorded, because some of the best features of a Tesla vehicle are because of these miles driven on the road. A lot of this data is analyzed by a supercomputer or AI at Tesla headquarters, and it makes the driving experience of the car so much better. So there are advantages to it. And it makes improvements to things like the awful wipers that are in Teslas. Like, they keep tweaking the sensitivity of it. I really hope that they come out with an update that allows us to change the sensitivity of the wipers. But again, I'm getting off topic here. There are things they can improve, and that system is improving all the time. So on to my next subject. I had a discussion with a friend of mine who has, at times I think he's had 16 tractors. He is the ultimate farmer, the ultimate tractor enthusiast. And I wanted to get his thoughts on electrification of different segments in the industry, especially farming. I'm not a farmer. I have never done work on a farm, so I have a very poor understanding of this. And again, you need to correct me if I make any strange assumptions here. So my friend was telling me last night that he doesn't believe electric tractors can work. And I always thought they could, because they run a hydraulic motor that would only turn on when you need to, say, move a shovel or articulate something. So it wouldn't be an engine that's constantly running on this hydraulic pump that has a bypass valve in order to run equipment. It would be really nice if that pump motor only had the turn anytime it was used. For example, I had a Mazda 3 a long time ago, a 2004 Mazda 3, and it had electric power steering. And it used this same concept. It had a hydraulic power steering pump that was driven by an electric motor, but that motor only turned on when you turned the wheel. So same concept for electric tractors, for example. Now, he brought up to me the fact that tractors have to run for 16 hours straight. I was not aware that tractors were run so heavily all day long, and they just don't stop. They're digging at different plow angles into the fields. They have to pull posts and something around the lot, which I think would be great use for an electric tractor, but the plowing, the massive fields that they have to cover. And he was telling me that you need infrastructure that can charge it really, really fast. And even a 20 to 40 minute downtime in a farmer's day would decimate their productivity. Farmers are some of the hardest working people I know, and I commend them. I love that farmers are willing to do the work that they do. They put the food on our table, and so that's why I wanted to have this discussion with him. Now, that always brought us back to the Ram charger concept. Like I've said in many podcasts and videos before, I am so enamored with the Ram charger that is coming out, the plug-in hybrid, because it's a series hybrid, because it is a fully electric vehicle that allows you all of the benefits of regen down a hill with a trailer behind you, but all of the benefits of unlimited range and the infrastructure that we have available at this time. Now, farming equipment would not be able to use the concept I had of hydrogen, because you would need compressed hydrogen, would have to fill it back up during the day, and this would be a very sloppy mess. There are probably other ways we could go about this, but if farming equipment, he brought up the example of a combine harvester. He said, why can't we electrify a combine harvester? Why are they just straight diesel still? And I agree with him. That plug-in hybrid concept from a Ram charger would be fantastic. If there was a specific size battery pack that went in it that you're able to charge, a lot of companies don't quite understand that side of it. If you have a plug-in hybrid, you need to be able to charge the battery. I only bring that up because I know Toyota is very interested in hydrogen. I came across an article this week about a hydrogen-powered Toyota Tundra. There's only one in existence, and it's used by Toyota's headquarters specifically for testing purposes. And they believe that this would be the answer for long-haul towing and pickup trucks. And I 100% agree with that. The only thing that concerns me is that Toyota is very much into the idea that if it's a hydrogen vehicle, you cannot charge the battery with a plug. I really hope that's not true, but that's the impression that I get from the company, especially, let's say, for the Toyota Mirai. You cannot plug in a Toyota Mirai. The fuel cell is the only source that is there to charge the battery that's in it that drives the wheels. Because this is how a fuel cell works. There is a small battery pack in it, and there is a hydrogen fuel cell. The reason there's a small battery pack in it is because the hydrogen fuel cell does not give out consistent on-demand power that is enough to drive the drive wheels. So for that reason, the fuel cell has to charge the battery pack in the car in order for that battery pack to deliver the power to drive the wheels on demand, because that battery pack has the ability to put out a certain number of kilowatts required to drive the wheels. Now, the Toyota Mirai was very similar to the Prius. It was not a fast vehicle, not a powerful vehicle. So keeping in line with that Ram Charger idea, with that fully electric battery pack, and the fact that it has a V6 engine that is only there to charge that battery pack, so the battery pack can put out the power required to drive the wheels, and is not a slouch. This is a very, very capable truck because that battery is 98 kilowatts. It's the size of a standard range F150 Lightning's battery pack. Okay, I might be wrong on the figures. It might be 90. Let's say it's 92 to 98 kilowatts. That's what I remember. But the gist of it is, it's large enough that it can drive a lot of power and not sacrifice anything in the process. So that brings me back to the farm equipment, or basically any kind of construction equipment that runs hydraulics, especially if those hydraulics are used to run every part of the vehicle. Think about how a diesel-powered train works nowadays. It is a diesel engine running a generator that runs electricity to power the wheels on the train. Because this system works, it allows that diesel engine to run at an RPM that is satisfactory for that engine design. Like, for example, a hybrid is very efficient. It can get that 40% thermal efficiency because it uses an Atkinson cycle engine that is able to stay in an RPM range that is the most efficient, the most thermally efficient, the most power you can get out of the fuel that goes through it. So take that concept, put it into a piece of farm equipment, put a battery pack in it. Let's say it's 25 kilowatts, like an old Nissan Leaf battery. And you had an engine that was there to charge said battery pack on demand. And then those hydraulic systems will only draw power from that battery pack when required. That pump doesn't have to run 100% of the time. And it also means the engine doesn't have to run 100% of the time, and make it so you can plug in that battery. So that way, all of the small jobs that you have to do can be run all electric from your power outlet, from what you've charged up, let's say the night before, or while you're having lunch, or anything like that. The plug-in part of that hybrid concept is key. That is where you get so much more savings. So think about how an ICE engine works, a diesel engine works. You only get 20% thermal efficiency out of that because there's so many inefficiencies in the process. One, the power only goes out once. You can't regen it back in. There is no recreating the fuel. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the engine is always on. It doesn't just turn off. I know there's start-stop systems out there, but it's nowhere near as efficient as a hybrid system. So yeah, engine's always running. That's number two. And number three, even if it was made hybrid, a lot of companies leave out the plug-in portion of that. So you go from 20% thermal efficiency from a straight ICE setup. You can get up to a 40% thermal efficiency with a hybrid setup. Now, take it one step further and make it a plug-in hybrid, and I estimate you could easily get up to 60% thermal efficiency with a small battery, and you could get as high as 80% with a very large battery in that piece of equipment. So electrified tractors, electrified farm equipment can work. Mining equipment can work. Electrified dump trucks can work. They have proven that electric dump trucks work phenomenally well, especially with the amount of weight they're carrying down a hill. There is that one dump truck out there. I think it hauls 600 tons. And what it does is it loads up at the top of the hill with all this gravel, and it brings it down the hill. Sorry, it's not 600 tons. It's a 600 kilowatt hour battery in this huge dump truck, and being a plug-in dump truck. And when it goes down the hill with its load, the load is so heavy that it actually charges the battery more than what was used for the trip. They actually end up with, I think, 200 kilowatts of extra energy at the end of the day, just because of the design of that. Now, that's not the same in every site. This is only because the truck loads up at the top of the hill and goes down. But it just illustrates the benefits of regen. Regen is incredibly useful, but in a hybrid it's very limited because it can only put it into, let's say, a 1.5 kilowatt battery. If you're towing a 10,000 pound trailer down a hill with a hybrid truck that only has a 1.5 or 2.5 kilowatt battery, how much energy are you really going to regen? A hybrid truck nowadays has a battery so small that it's basically just enough to get you going from a stoplight and just regenerates enough energy from stopping to help get you going again, and nothing more. This is why the Ramcharger concept is so fascinating to me, is because it takes advantage of so much more regen. It's so much more flexible. In most cases, that truck will do literally 80-90% of your driving. Now, in the farm situation, maybe it doesn't do 80-90%. If that tractor really does have to run 16 hours a day, you're really only going to have the benefit of the first couple hours with the electric side of it, but you'll still have the benefits of not running that pump motor all the time and the benefits of thermal efficiency of an engine that is attached to that unit. And of course, we can always move forward with something else, biofuels or different liquefied fuels that we can come up with in the future that either don't emit carbon or have drastically reduced carbon dioxide output. So that brings me to the F-150 Lightning. It's an all-electric truck. We've just been talking about plug-in hybrids, but I wanted to bring up some of the benefits of an all-electric truck. And in my mind, again, I'm not a farmer. You can let me know down below what you think. But I think the F-150 Lightning is a wonderful vehicle for a lot of different use cases. The fact that it has 240 volts on board. Think about this. There are trucks that exist called welding trucks. Now, this would not be up to the capacity of those trucks. Those trucks have massive engines that run a very powerful welder for industrial level welding. I'm not talking about those. But with a 240 volt outlet, you could easily run a MIG welder on your F-150 Lightning with no extra modifications. You just plug it into the truck, go out. Let's say you're a farmer and you have to fix a fence and you have to weld it on the spot. This truck is amazing for that because it's got a 131 kilowatt hour battery in it. And driving the distances on a farm are usually at low speed. And that vehicle could easily run for hours and hours and hours because you're not driving huge long distances across the highway or towing a huge trailer across town. What you're doing on a farm typically is the same number of acres every day, and you always have that central location where you can charge it. So an F-150 Lightning would fit the bill in so many cases. You go out and you fix the fences. You go out with your welder and you weld on site. If you're out in the dark, which farmers are often out working past sundown, you can run all of your lights off of the truck for whatever job it is that you're doing at the time. And being on a local property, you can even max out that towing and take a 10,000 pound trailer across your property. And the range is not going to matter all that much. You're not driving 400 kilometers across a farm. You're typically in the same 30, 50, 100 kilometers, I'm guessing, for the size of a farm that's out there. And it has no problem towing a trailer. The power is there. The off-road capabilities are there. It has a locking rear differential. And I'm sure we could come out with locking features for the front of them eventually. So this truck can improve. And this is just one of those amazing use cases for an F-150 Lightning. Think about it, farm use. This is one implement where a fully electric vehicle would actually work. It can't do the 16 hours of that tractor like I was talking about earlier, but 16 hours of use of a Lightning is perfectly possible within the capabilities of that truck. Another use case for the F-150 Lightning, I've always thought landscaping would be the perfect use for this, especially with a fully electrified landscaping setup. For example, you could have Ego tools. They have a professional line of tools, and there's Green Power tools, and there's a couple other ones out there. Actually, there's quite a few of them out there now of electrified tools. In fact, I was at a trade show in Aurelia last year, and they had this special trailer that was made up. Now, it was astronomically expensive. I think it was $250,000 for this trailer, but it had zero-turn mowers in the trailer with a 28 kilowatt battery on board that was there to charge the zero turns in between jobs. And it had everything built in it. It was a fully loaded, decked out package of all professional zero turns and mowers and trimmers and chainsaws. It was quite the thing. It was incredible. The price point was a little much. I've seen a lot of people make the same kind of trailer for a lot less money. And they built their own solar panels on top actually to charge it on the go, which I thought was ingenious. And they were going about the cost. It's very interesting how these power tools, they all use these specialized batteries, obviously for the brand, but they charge an arm and a leg for them. If you think about an Ego battery, it's like $330 to $500 for these batteries. Now, the battery cells that are in them are not worth that much. That's all pure profit for the company. So, and you have to replace those every 10 years. And that can get very cost prohibitive. So instead of just running the Ego batteries, there have been people out there that built that solar setup into their trailers because the cost of the batteries that went into the trailers were less than half the cost of the batteries they were using in the tools. So for that reason, they bought half as many batteries for the tools that they were using, zero-turn mowers, trimmers, lawn mowers, snow blowers, all those electric use things that they use for a landscaping company. And they're able to charge them in the trailer. So it's great for going site to site. So yeah, this is one use I love for an F-150 Lightning. Whether you have a very small landscaping company with a very small trailer and only, let's say, one mower, or even if you load all that stuff into the truck bed of the F-150 Lightning and bring it from site to site, you have the onboard power to charge all the batteries for an all-electric landscaping company. And I think that's a really neat use case for that vehicle because that truck can easily cover 400 kilometers and can easily cover at least 250 kilometers towing. In a lot of cases, landscapers go from property to property to property. So whether it's trailer or not, it's a great vehicle for that purpose. You can charge all the batteries and everything right off the truck. You don't need to build a $250,000 trailer with all the trimmings. You can start out with one trailer or just the truck bed and one zero-turn mower, one dual-stage snowblower, one trimmer, whatever it is, and you have your set of batteries and your chargers, and they charge in the truck while you're doing the job, which means that there is no downtime. You just swap out the batteries, boom, and keep going. And then the next ones are charging off the truck. it's such a perfect use case for it. Now that brings me to the end of this episode. I want to know your comments. I talked a lot about some interesting subjects that I am not an expert in. So for the experts in those subjects, I really do want to hear your opinion. I do read every comment on the YouTube channel. I haven't had any comments on Spotify yet, so feel free to leave me comments there. But yeah, if you're listening to this on Spotify, check out the YouTube channel. We do reviews, we do interviews, we do tech tips. There's a lot of good stuff there, so just come check it out. And for anyone who's watching or listening, thank you very much, and maybe considering liking the channel or subscribing to the channel, and just pay attention to what we're doing next.